Hello, beautiful people. This is Lady Mostyle, and I'm coming to you with just some conversation in the car, of course. So, kind of might have to excuse the noise a little bit because sometimes it can get a little loud. I don't know what it sounds like for you guys, but I just come to you guys because I had this conversation with a young lady that I worked with today. And it made me think about sometimes how funny God can use you for His good. And so, the young lady I work with she's in the midst of a storm, and by storm I mean her and her daughter were evicted from their apartment, and she had some family that basically betrayed her, turned their back on her, and didn't offer her a place to stay to help her through this dark time that she's going through. All this time she'd been thinking like family first, but then as soon as she got into situations where she needed to actually really depend on family, they were not there. And so she's really, really hurt by it. She started talking to me about it today at work, and she ended up in complete tears. And, we got into this conversation about, about family and how sometimes we expect ourselves out of other people. And I thought it was so funny as I was saying the things that I was saying to her, that I had heard, my husband had said to me a few times on some things that were going on in my family that I can't expect me from other people. And if I would learn that, then I would be less hurt in certain situations. And I found myself saying some of those things to her, but what I thought was so funny is that I've been on my own journey to learn boundaries, and learning that just when the relationship goes bad, whatever relationship, friendship, familyship, relationships go bad, they're not always because you did something wrong. And I was having a conversation with her, and I was just like, sometimes it's not you. And she's overanalyzing herself. What did she do to not make her family not want to support her, not want to be there for her? And I'm like, why are you giving yourself a hard time? Maybe you didn't do anything. Maybe those people in your life are showing you exactly who they are. And because you are who you are, you expected something different, but they've been that way the entire time. And, I was telling her that, I've been learning a lesson about giving people boundaries from allowing people to mistreat me. And I was just like, what I realized is that when I'm reading a book about setting boundaries, and in the book about setting boundaries, there was a chapter that broke down about when you set those boundaries, that you cannot control how people react to the boundaries that you set. And she was saying that, those family members have hurt her by not even extending extra rooms that they had for her and her daughter. And so here recently, one of the cousin who's not extended had reached out to her in a text message and was mad at her because she haven't heard from her. And so she's just like, I'm just going through something right now. And immediately that person was mad at her for not having time to talk to her about her issues, but you didn't show up for me and my issues. And I told her, I said, that's a prime example of people get accustomed to the things that we allow them to do to us. And we move in a space where sometimes not everybody shows up. We allow people to mistreat us by how unkind they are with us, and we take it on as jokes because they family. And we allow people to move in spaces that make us uncomfortable or make us feel less valid. And we continue to allow that because it's family. The reality to it is that shit hurt. It hurts. And just because you don't say something don't mean it don't hurt your feelings. And a lot of times we just act like we're not hurt by it because we feel like that's what we're supposed to do because it's family. But the reality to it is that basically we teach people how to treat us. So the more we take, the more those people feel like it's okay to continue to treat us like that. Because we, one, don't voice that we're hurt by the actions of that person. And we just show up and continue on being the same person when we are hurt and feel unloved or mistreated. We just continue to do what we've always done because they're family. We give them a pass because they're family. But the reality to it is basically all you're doing is teaching that person or that family member how to mistreat you. And the moment that you are going through your storm and you no longer are in a place to accept that, or you realize that you're worth more than that, and you give the boundary, then those family members turn and get ugly and nasty with their words, and now they're saying things to other people in your family. And that's because you can't control how somebody reacts to you setting a boundary. The only thing you can control is the boundary you set, and to not go back on the boundary you set. Because if you go back on it, all you do is open yourself up to the same exact routine that you've always done. So when you set the boundary for people not to disrespect you or mistreat you or handle you any kind of way, there's going to be a reaction to the boundary. And that's the part that people don't talk to you about. And sometimes that can be more hurtful because you'll see that person not call you, not check on you, not act like you exist. And you feel hurt by it. But really, the reason why they were calling you is because they've always been allowed to dump their shit off on you. And now they can't dump it off on you. So now they mad. So they don't care nothing about you. Well, really, in general, they never cared anything about you. If you really think about it, you've been the person comforting them in phone calls. They never asked you about what's going on with you. And then when you do tell them stuff, they tell everybody else. So that was her experience. And so for me, I had to tell it, talking to her in conversation, I was just like, sometimes the lesson is in the boundary. No matter how bad it hurts, when people stop calling because you set a boundary on how you want to be loved, or you feel like you deserve more than what you have been experiencing. Even if you recognize those things, that doesn't mean that those people recognize those things. And sometimes the response from you giving the boundary is them being like, you don't exist. And that can hurt too. And so I feel like life is teaching you something. I believe that life has a cycle of showing you the things you need to see. And sometimes we have to change our perception of what those things are showing you. She was hurt because she's like, I'm evicted. I don't know why this could have happened to me. I don't know why people are not being there for me. But in a sense, I'm like, you may need to change your perspective on that, because the eviction could have happened to protect you from something else. Her not being a supportive cousin is basically showing you who she is. So you're not depending on somebody who really not rooting for you. She don't mean you no goodwill. So maybe this is God rooting these people out. And sometimes I believe that when we are in spaces where God is trying to move us from one mountain or from one thing or level us up, sometimes, as Auntie Tab say, everybody can't go. And for me, I struggle with being okay with letting people go, because I've always had such a loyalty to people, sometimes way more loyal to people than I'm loyal to myself. And I would be feeling away when people wouldn't show up the way I would show up for them. And like I said, expecting me out of other people. And I'd be hurt by it. But I'm saying right now, in this season of my life, God has shown me some things in people that I never thought he would show me those things in. And so I'm always showing up for other people, but I play on myself. So now I'm not showing up for so many people, and I'm recognizing that I'm that girl, and it's okay for me to choose myself, and it's okay for me to set boundaries. It's okay for me not to be in a space where mentally I cannot hear your problems, and that's okay. That doesn't mean that I don't love you anymore. It just means that I don't play by myself right now. I don't play about my peace right now. I don't play about this journey that I'm on right now. And in this space in my life, I only want to love those who openly and genuinely love me back, encourage me. And that's the space that I'm in. So I told her sometimes you have to change your perspective. You have to change your perspective on who and what and the roles that people play in your life, and change the perspective of what's negative in your life, how you look at what's happening in your life as a negative, and start thinking that what is God blocking me from? When something negative happens in your life, think to yourself, what is God blocking me from? What is he preparing me for in this phase of my life? What bigger blessing is he getting ready to open up in your life? And he needs you to be wholeheartedly in love with who you are and stand firm in who you are in this space that he's getting ready to move in. Sometimes we have to look at it in a completely different way, in a shift, because looking at it from a negative state, you're going to miss the blessing that God is preparing you for. You're going to miss the blessing that God is doing. You're going to miss all the blessings that he has been doing in your life. And I think sometimes we be so focused on how we want life to look for us that we forget that we're on borrowed time and that this life is not ours. And so, like I told her today, she was extremely emotional. I'm like, cool, be emotional. Show up, be emotional, have the feelings. Those are great, because everybody needs to move through it the way they need to move through it. But at the end of the day, recognize all of the blessings that God has put in your life. Whoever opened the door for you and your daughter to stay, that's a blessing. What are you supposed to learn in that? What are you supposed to learn from those people? Why did God pick these people to allow you to be in their space as opposed to family? The prayer should be, God, what do you need me to learn in this moment? What are you trying to get me to learn in this moment? God, what are you preparing me for in this moment? I just want to be ready. I want to be ready. I want to be whole. So, I be having all these thoughts in my head, and I just thought, for a very long time, I never understood why people gravitated toward me, even as a kid. And I always felt very comfortable with talking to me about life, things that was happening to them. And my mama used to be like, stop talking to all these strays. Stop bringing all these strays. And so for a very long time, I thought it was a curse. I thought I wore some look on my face that said, send me damaged people. But I realized that everybody got a ministry, whether they recognize it or not. And I feel like this is my ministry. And it makes me emotional to think that for a long time I thought that it was a curse. But I believe that God gives me certain things happening in my life because it's not merely just for me. It's because God intends for me to share that ministry with somebody else, to help somebody else. And in my worst times, when I felt alone, God used those stories to uplift somebody else. And I am changing my perspective and realizing the blessing in it. That sometimes God will make your negative a positive for somebody else. And so I want to share my positives with other people. Because sometimes I think that we be at our lowest of lows because we feel like we're all in it by ourselves. And we're not. So this is just my declare for today. My declaration from me to you is to change your perspectives on how you look at all the negative things happening in your life, and think to yourself, what are they protecting you from? What is God preparing you for? And will you be ready for the task when He gives it to you? So I pray that everybody that hears this message, that God encourages you. I hope y'all have a blessed weekend. If you checked into this message, I would appreciate if you do me a favor. Go ahead, like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Help us run our numbers up and help control the algorithm. We need more positive encouragement in life these days. So I pray that this message encourages somebody to change their perspective and look at life in a different space. I pray that God continues to bless whoever listens to this and who's ever watching us. Y'all have a blessed day. And if you can't have a blessed day, don't go messing up somebody else's. Yep. If you can't be a blessing, don't go messing up somebody else's day to be a blessing. So, y'all be good.